Happy Friday to you. Bob Rankin, Northeast Funding Services. Thank you for joining us for another Lunch and Learn. I have my friend with me today, Joe Nealer from Accent Associates. Joe is an appraiser. You want to say hello, Joe?
Hi.
How long have you been appraising, Joe?
14 years.
14 years.
Yeah.
I know Joe's been doing appraisals for us, for at least 10 years. A lot of people don't really know what an appraiser is or what an appraisal is. Joe, could you give us a real brief definition of what an appraisal is?
Well, we're involved from the bank's perspective. The bank is the one that has to bring us in, correct? So in other words, Bob can't call me up and say, Joe, I need to order an appraisal. So once the lender's been established, then the bank calls us and sets that up. Essentially, what I'm looking for, we're going to go through and do three approaches to value is essentially what is involved. So there's the income approach, which is what a house would be worth if it was rented, or from an income standpoint. There's cost analysis, what it would cost to reconstruct. But the most common means of valuing a house is the sales approach. What similar houses to your house would sell for, hypothetically. So we're going to go, ideally, we'll find a minimum of 3 sales that had sold within the past year, and use those sales as a comparison to yours, making adjustments for, say, if something superior, your house is next to the water or closer to the bus route or something to that effect, and then we're going to make adjustments for we'll say location. We're going to make adjustments for decks or swimming pools, things of that nature. So
to kind of interject something, what Joe started off by saying, no broker, lender, or mortgage company, bank, or credit union can order an appraisal directly from an appraiser for fear of collusion, falsifying values. You remember back what they're now referring to as the Great Recession, when all the property values in the late 1990s, early 2000s started skyrocketing, is because of false inflation of the property values. And that's because there was really no criteria to stop somebody from falsifying the values. So lenders would hook up with an appraiser, or brokers would hook up with an appraiser and say, if you don't give me the value on this, I'm not going to give you any more work, which is really wrong. So what the government did is do HVCC, not Hudson Valley Community College, but Home Value Code of Conduct, to prevent anybody from being able to determine who the appraiser is. On any given appraisal that we order, we don't know who that appraiser is going to be. It's independent. That protects you, the borrower, or the buyer of a house, to make sure that somebody's not falsifying the values. When Joe said you're using a minimum of 3 comparables, that's exactly what it is. You're not going to compare a Chevrolet Malibu to a Corvette. Yeah, they're both Chevrolets, they're both homes, but they're totally different. You can't use a comparison there. So a good appraiser is going to find comparable properties, and that, I'm assuming, is going to include bedrooms, bathrooms.
The largest common denominator is location. It goes back to the biggest salient feature is location, comparable construction. Everybody's looking for conformity today. The market's very nervous about anything that doesn't conform, and consequently there's a lot of reaction in that regard, and in terms of valuing properties. But when everything is conforming and we're just dealing with Clifton Park subdivision, that there's 100 comparable sales, and there's a radius in which we're working, and finding comparables is very small, say within a quarter mile or half mile. All the sales are under 6 months or a year. That's very cookie cutter. That's very simplified. So
it's not challenging you.
No.
What about your job, or tell me what was challenging about your job that you like to do?
What's challenging?
Or unusual? You mentioned something earlier about a bird.
Oh! So the other day I come out of a house, and a peregrine falcon had just nabbed not chipmunk, it was a squirrel, and he had that in his talons. So.
No, I'm assuming that wasn't in a subdivision?
No, it was near the rec park there in Saratoga, and I actually jumped the neighbor's fence to get a video. and another neighbor came out and was like, "What are you doing in her yard?"
No dogs.
So,
if somebody was saying, if you were to sit down with somebody and they're saying, "Joe, I'm thinking about buying a home," and do you think I mean, are there any tips you can give me from being an appraiser that I should look for?
in terms of what?
For example, I don't want to overpay for my house, and I want to make sure I get a good home. Do you recommend any real large differences between a home that's 100 years old or one that's 20 years old? Or is the school district more important, or a foundational issue, or water versus well?
Occasionally I get called in to do consulting I actually had a real estate agent, a fairly new real estate agent, who was just really in love with this house. It was in the Luther Forest subdivision. Her father lived on the other end of this walking path, and she was just in love with the house, and she was willing to pay pretty much anything to get the house. And so she had retained me to come in and kind of give us a reality check. I think was the best. So that would be my advice, is that just don't get house fever.
Right. Now, what do you mean by house fever?
House fever in the context that you're just so in love with it that you're just going to pay no matter what.
You're putting the rose-colored glasses on.
Yeah, and it's not gonna make value. It's not gonna appraise. So and that's what she wanted to know before she went and applied for a mortgage. Is this going to get denied because I'm just ultimately paying too much?
I think that also goes back to having the right real estate agent as well. I mean, if you think about the process of buying a home, getting pre-qualified first to find out what you can comfortably afford. Not what you're qualified for, but what's comfortable. Number two, when you get hooked up with the right real estate agent, somebody who understands your needs and what you're trying to accomplish, but it's also going to be, as Joe just said, have a reality check for you. So when you see a nice home, they're going to go back to the MLS, multiple listing service, and try and find comparable homes that have sold to substantiate the value. So Joe, that brings up a question. When you're doing an appraisal, are you looking for homes that are listed for sale to get a value, or homes that have actually sold that establish the value?
Most of my direct lenders, the people that I work with, the banks that I work with directly, typically don't require active listings. Active listings are oftentimes a good indicator if the market's going up or going down. So when the market was really weird and things were going down in 2009, 2010, routinely it was every single report, every single appraisal request I would receive would be, we want a minimum of 2 active comparables. It's always 3 sales, okay, 3 closed sales. But when the market was going up and down, they wanted to, or down at the time, everybody was requesting additional active sales. And what that tells the lender is it's showing market movement. So if I've got a comparable sale that's listed on the market for less than what this one just purchased for, that's a bad sign. So, and if it's a good comparable. So, and if that's even relevant, I'll put that in the report, whether the market's going up or the client requested it.
Right.
Whether the market's going up or down or the client requested it. So.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, you're approved to do conventional loans, USDA loans, and FHA loans, right?
Correct.
Do they all appraise exactly the same, or they have different requirements?
FHA and USDA are an arm of HUD. So you've got HUD is the parent, and actually VA as well. So I'm not a VA approved appraiser, but I am FHA approved, and if you're FHA approved, then you can work for USDA, right, for rural housing. The rural housing requirements follow the same guidelines as FHA. They use the 4000.1 handbook for their guidelines.
Here's my point being, for example, if somebody has a house that is built in 1965, are there certain things you look for? Because you always hear stories about you can't have peeling paint, broken window panes. things of that nature?
FHA has guidelines that are more safety orientated, as opposed to the conventional loans that you get through Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac. So when an FHA loan is being completed, I have to follow their guidelines and make sure that that property will meet or does meet the FHA guidelines. So peeling paint, as you said, that anything that was built before 1978, you've got the lead paint issues. What I often tell my clients is that the best rule of thumb is if the house is safe for a toddler, then it's going to pass. So if you are going through the house and you look and there's an open outlet cover that kid could stick his finger in, that's actually the biggest. I know some appraisers actually carry, they're 50 cents. They carry the outlet covers and, just screw them in.
Pop them on.
So when safety issues. So FHA does have a safety mind or safety sense that has to be addressed in the appraisal. And it's a little confusing to people. They don't understand why, and as of late they want us testing appliances, testing utilities. So
to your point there, I think a lot of questions sometimes on my end of it that I see is an appraisal come back in, and on the bottom of page 2 it says this is subject to repairs being done, or this does not meet FHA HUD guidelines. And people start to panic, say, oh my gosh, I'm not going to get my house. That's not necessarily true at all. Quite often, depending on what needs to be done, the seller is more than willing most of the time to take care of it, or the seller is more than willing to have you, the purchaser, to go in and take care of it. Because with a rare exception, I'd say 80% of the issues we see on USDA or FHA appraisals is peeling paint. It's simply a matter of scraping off what is loose, painting over it where it encapsulates it. Can't even say the word right. Or putting on a missing handrail, or replacing a broken window pane. Something really simple, nothing very major at all. But there's another aspect that Joe's just starting to take over. He's been doing FHA appraisals for quite a few years, but he's also looking to become an FHA consultant. What does that mean, Joe?
An FHA 203K consultant is not anything to do with appraising. The 203K loan program is designed to provide additional funds for repairs, for leaky roofs, for additions, things of that nature. So if somebody comes to Bob and they want to get a roof repaired and get get that work completed before they close the loan or after they close the loan, the 203K consultant would come in, review contractor estimates, and in the review of the contractor estimates, put it in an FHA format that's an agreeable format, and package it off to be approved by HUD, by FHA.
I say has nothing to do with appraisal, but I'm going to disagree with you a little bit because it puts you in more of a professional or expert mode than a lot of other people might be. For example, on an FHA 203K, if you're buying a home, they're actually doing two valuations. What's the value of the house as it sits right now? And then what's the value of the house after all the work's completed? Because it allows you to borrow above the current purchase price to do permanent renovations. People think, well, what if there's nothing really wrong with the house? I just don't like the kitchen because it's a 1950s kitchen. It allows you to borrow, again, above the purchase price to do the permanent renovation. Well, what if I like the house, but it doesn't have enough bedrooms? It allows you to do a room addition. So keep in mind, when you're out there looking at homes, if you find that the old saying, location, 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 location to work, location to shopping, location to schools, everything's there except for the quality of the house. Put the rose-colored glasses on and say, if it had this, this, and this, would I be happy? Because then an FHA renovation loan might be the best for you. And again, where it ties with the consultant's report is the appraiser is going to do an as-is value and an after-the-market value. But by Joe being experienced in appraisals, what it lets him know, being a consultant, is what else might this house need that they're not thinking about. As a simple example, if somebody has a 3-bedroom home, 1 bath, and they're looking to add on, let's say, a 400 square foot master bedroom plus a bathroom, and it doesn't have a sewer system, Joe might sit there and say, we need to check out the septic system to make sure it's going to be able to handle the new volume going through. Or somebody's looking to do a second story addition. Is this foundation sufficient enough to support the load of a second story? So kind of wrapping it up, what we're talking about here is it's important to have an expert do the valuation of your home. It's important to have an expert give you the fair value market of your house, a FHA consultant to make sure you're not missing anything. The last thing you want to do is get into a purchase or a renovation only to find out your ducks weren't in a row. Joe, thank you for meeting with us today. Have a great weekend.